Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Association for Women in Communication, the South Florida chapter. This is our Monday morning Empower Yourself Monday Twitter Spaces that we host, where we feature and honor a communication specialist, a woman who has gone through ups and downs and a triumph to the end. So it's exciting to have a fellow space host. Again, this is Tanya Schultz, the president. I'm in the AWCSF's Twitter profile, but Ruth L. Snyder, she's one of the spaces hosts, and I've been on her space. She's been on my space. So today I'm thrilled that we're able to feature her. And so before we start, I'm going to go ahead and give the mic to Terry Michael, who is our VP, and she will lead us into a Monday morning breathing mindfulness exercise. The mic is yours, Terry.
Thank you, Tanya. Welcome, everybody. Wherever you are, whether you're standing, laying down, or sitting, relax, close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Again, inhale and exhale. One more time, inhale and exhale. Relax your face, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your chest. Let it all go. Visualize the stress going down your arms, out through your fingertips. Your upper body is totally relaxed. Going down to your torso, relax your torso, your hips. Visualize stress going down your legs, out through your toes. And you're completely relaxed, gently breathing in and out through your nose. Eyes still closed. And as you're gently breathing in and out through your nose, allow your mind to only think about the air that's going in and out through your nose. Try to just visualize that instead of everything else. And if something else comes into your mind, visualize that floating away like clouds in the sky. And I do have some closing thoughts. A cheerful expression brings joy to the heart, and good news gives health to the bones. Here's a task for today. Be the bearer of only good news today. In living out this task, note whether you find it difficult to maintain, and if so, discover why within yourself. Namaste. May the divine in me honor the divine in you. Thank you.
I hope that did it. Welcome, everybody. I'm actually going to go ahead and set up the my computer here because I want to read Ruth's bio. So I don't know how your weekend was. It was a busy weekend. I actually did virtual conferences this weekend. So good morning, Laura. How are you? So everybody, welcome to the Association for Women in Communication, the South Florida chapter. And again, our national chapter is founded in 1909. When you think about women empowerment, you think of women in communications. So again, this is Tanya Schultz, the president of AWCSF, and I've been the president since 2008, on and off. I joined in 2007. Sat in a luncheon, and they were talking about Twitter and Second Life, and I was like, oh, this is the organization I want to be part of. They're trailblazers. I want to know more. At the time, no one was talking about social media. So along the way, we've done quite a bit in Web 2 and then social media. Now we're talking about Web 3. But one thing that we did when we were in a lockdown, as we call it, during the pandemic, because we were meeting twice a week. We were seeing our members and talking about different things and empowering women and having events. So now, since we've been doing social audio, we started beginning of this year doing hosting Empower Yourself Monday, where it's just a 60 minutes. We feature a communicator that has been a trailblazer, that has triumphed, has gone through some major things, and so along the way, each one of us, Emily, Terry, the three of us we're the board, and every day we're recruiting more. But we're actually from South Florida, and we try to feature women in South Florida. But then we also feature women globally from all over the world. So today, I have the opportunity to introduce Ruth Snyder, who I met through Brent Manuel and actually Keith Keller. Actually, I was on one of her spaces before, and so we got together for an event recently with Emily, who was also on the panel discussion, and we talked about how to pitch and all what's going on and how different things were, and I had the opportunity to work. I was the co-host and the sponsor of that event, and I got a chance to read up on more Ruth's bio, and I was just like, wow, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, Ruth, what? I was so impressed with everything she's done. And so right now I want to go ahead and bring her on and say, hey, Ruth, welcome to the AWCSF. But I want to go ahead and read your bio it's real quick because I really love it because you've gone through so much, and I'm trying to log on actually. So
while you're logging on, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tanya and Emily and Terry, for welcoming me this morning. And I'm really looking forward to interacting with you and learning more about you and answering questions that you might have.
okay, we are logged on. Thank you, Ruth. So let me read your bio. Ruth L. Snyder is a mom to 5 individuals aged 14 to 25 with special needs, including hearing loss, fetal alcohol effect, myopia, global developmental disability, generalized anxiety disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and autism. Her first published piece, Gifts from a Loving God, described Ruth's journey through infertility into the world of adoption and special needs. Ruth is an author, speaker, podcaster, and coach. She helps entrepreneurs write, publish, and profit from their books. Ruth, Ruth figures out ways to work smarter, not harder, and then shares those tips with her clients. One of her clients says Ruth makes the seemingly impossible feel attainable with her easy to follow steps. Ruth has shared with her expertise on platforms like Thrive Global, Women in Publishing, Authority Magazine, The Right Coach, and Author Audience Academy. And welcome, Ruth. And let me go ahead and there we go. How are you, Ruth? And you know, when I first read your bio, I was just so impressed, and then we talked more about it. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? I know I just read a short bio because that's what I had, but I know you've done so many different type of writing, especially when it comes to women empowerment, and especially working with author and being there and helping them. Because when you publish something, it's really incredible because when I try to publish something, sometimes I get kind of like scattered all over. But then when I can call somebody and they could just kind of talk me through because I have a friend. Her name's April Clemley. She's a writer, so she helps me with that too. But and I think everyone needs that. They need a partner, or a coach, or someone to just help them organize their thoughts. So Ruth, welcome to Empower Yourself Monday. And how are you this morning? And tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Tanya. It's earlier in where I am. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning instead of 10. So I was able to sit and watch the sunrise as I was waiting for the space to start. And I love watching nature. And that's one of the things I do for self-care is going out for walks and taking pictures and just breathing like Terry encouraged us to do. I also enjoy listening to music. And yeah, so I don't know where you want me to start with my story, but I'm glad to be here and happy to answer whatever questions you throw at me this morning.
Well, I'm kind of curious how, because, they say women, we can do everything. We can care, we can have a job, we can run a house, have children, but you adopted your children. Can you tell us a little bit about your history and some of the reason why you went through this route?
Definitely. So, when my husband and I were talking about getting married, we discussed how many children we wanted, and he came from a family of 6 boys, and I came from a family where there were 2 girls and 2 boys, and so we knew that we wanted children and we wanted several. We didn't really come up with any number, but after we got married, we tried to have children and nothing happened, and we actually went to an infertility clinic, and basically they told us that we probably would never have children of our own. And it was kind of crazy because 6 months after we went there, I did become pregnant, but the pregnancy didn't last long, and I had a miscarriage. And then I never became pregnant again. And so we knew that we wanted to have children, and so that's when we started looking into adoption. And our oldest actually came to us through one of our relatives, my sister-in-law. Her sister was 18 when she became pregnant, and she hadn't finished high school, and she was trying to be a mom, but she was working 3 jobs and hardly ever spending time with her daughter. And so Grace came to us when she was 8 months old, and we were able to adopt her. We knew nothing about adoption. And in Alberta, there are 3 different ways that you can adopt. You can adopt a relative's child, and that adoption is quite straightforward. You just basically go to do some paperwork with a lawyer and it's done. And so we originally thought we could do that because it was our sister-in-law's daughter, but ended up that we had to go a more complicated route. And so for 8 months, we lived with the uncertainty, knowing that if Mary, the birth mom, changed her mind, we would have to give our daughter back. And so that was a time that was really challenging for us. But she did go and sign the papers that she needed to sign, and then we were able to go through an adoption agency and finalize the adoption. And then the other way of adopting in Alberta is through the government's adoption program, and usually those.
Are you there, Ruth?
Sorry, somebody ended up calling me in the middle, and
I've been there.
anyways, so we adopted Grace, and then we put our names in with the same adoption agency that we had gone through for her adoption, and we waited for 2 years, and nothing happened. And so then we started exploring opportunities through the government adoption program, and ended up with twin boys who were born at 27 weeks and had quite high needs. But we felt like we were up for the challenge. And interestingly, before we adopted them, their mom had another son. And so about a year and a half after we adopted Luke and Levi, we adopted Jason as well. And then we thought we were done. But a few years later, we got a phone call from Children's Services saying, "Hey, your boys have a sister. Would you like to adopt her as well?" So The 4 younger children that we ended up adopting are all siblings, which is a blessing that they're able to be together and that we could be there for them. And we have learned so much and grown so much. I say that my kids turned me into a mama bear advocate.
And so let's talk about your books also, and what inspired you. So to go down your journey. So what were you doing before you because I know you traveled a lot when you were younger, but what were you guys doing before you had all your babies or your children?
Well, I traveled a lot when I was growing up. Um, so my parents were missionaries, and I was born in Michigan while they were waiting for their visa to go to South Africa. When I was 6 weeks old, they took me to South Africa along with my 2 older brothers. And then my sister was born in South Africa. My dad was a printer, and we lived in South Africa for 6 years. We came back after 5 years to North America, and then for a year, and then went back. And then one day when my dad was in the print shop, somebody came in and said, I need somebody to come tell my people about God. And so we ended up moving to Botswana, um, where we were for 4 years. And I also went to school in Zimbabwe for 1 year. And then we came back to Canada thinking that it was just another furlough, but things happened and we never did end up going back. And so then we settled in Canada. That's where my parents met at a Bible school in Canada. They were both from the States. My mom's from Nebraska and my dad's from Michigan. And I've ended up staying in Canada basically the rest of my life. But it was interesting because when I met my husband, he had never been out of Canada. And so after we adopted our first daughter, then we um, went to Africa. I wanted to show him where I grew up, and so was able to do that. And um, one of the most wonderful experiences that I've had was being able to drive from Botswana all the way across South Africa. I did not realize that there are 7 distinct geographical areas in South Africa, and it's such a beautiful country. And I feel very privileged to have been able to experience that.
So Ruth, so tell us more about like when did you pick up a pen and decide like, hey, I'm gonna write a book?
So that's interesting because I talked to a lot of writers who have always wanted to write. They knew from the time that they started learning how to read and write that they were going to be writers. I That didn't happen to me. I always enjoyed writing, and I still remember the feeling and the excitement of learning to read and understanding that those squiggles on the page had meaning to them. So I was fascinated with reading and writing, and I was a voracious reader. And so I did very well in all of my English and literacy classes. I was on the school yearbook committee, did a lot of writing for the school newspaper. But again, I really never took my writing seriously. When I graduated from college, I ended up working in a bookstore. And so I've always had that love for reading and writing. And my dad was a printer. So I loved the smell of paper and ink from a very young age. And but it wasn't until I was an adult. My mom was actually one of the ones that encouraged me to pursue writing, and she saw this advertisement for a writing quiz from the Institute of Children's Literature in Connecticut. And so I took the quiz, and of course I passed, and um, ended up taking some courses from them. But I still didn't really pursue writing until after we adopted our kids. And um, I thought that their story should be told. And so then there was a Canada wide writing contest that I entered. And I was very surprised a few weeks later to receive an email informing me that I won first place in the contest. And the prize was a writing conference. So I flew to Ontario, walked into this room, not knowing anybody that was there, knowing that many of them had published several books in their life already. And I kind of felt like I didn't belong. And yet I was like, well, I won the prize, so I guess I should be here and kind of explore the opportunity. And another thing that kind of made me pause was by that time we had 5 children, ages 1 to 11. And I had also been elected onto our local school board. And so I was trying to figure out how I was going to squeeze writing into my very busy life because our children did have significant disabilities. And I spent most of my days taking them to appointments, doing therapy with them, and just making sure that all of their needs were met. And then also advocating for them because most times when people have disabilities, they're not able to advocate for themselves. So that's kind of how I got into writing. And when I was at that conference, we had the opportunity to have appointments with other writers who were farther down the road than us. And one of the writers suggested to me that I use Twitter as my microblog. So that's when I started using Twitter. And it's interesting how my writing story and my Twitter story are totally intertwined because I went onto Twitter every day, and Twitter taught me how to communicate concisely and effectively, and also be consistent at something. And then in my school board work, I realized how powerful Twitter could be when we were advocating for new schools in our area, and we had followed all the proper protocol and met with all the government officials, and they had approved a couple of schools but told us that we couldn't have the size of schools that we needed. And we knew that if we went ahead with the plan that the government was proposing, the schools would be full before they were even built. And so we ended up coming to a board meeting, and the superintendent said, I really don't know what else to do. We're at loggerheads and there's no movement, and they just won't budge and we won't budge. And so I put my hand up and I said, is it okay if I send out some tweets? So I was very careful with how I worded those tweets. And as far as we know, nothing else changed. But the next morning, the superintendent received a phone call from Alberta Education. And within a year and a half, those schools were built at the size that we needed them to be built. So I realized then how powerful Twitter could be if you used it correctly. And when I went on to write my first book, which was Learn Twitter, Beginning Steps, I thought my first book would be a devotional, but people kept asking me, well, you seem to be using Twitter so effectively, and you're getting your book written and you're not wasting time. How do you do it? So that's why I wrote my first book called Learn Twitter. And when I wrote it, I was able to get into the hands of thousands of people because of Twitter, because I had the connections built already. And people were asking for what I was writing. So now I really strongly encourage writers to use Twitter because I have seen how effective it can be for writers.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at your website and your blog. So you were actually really using Twitter as a microblog, because I remember the early days when I joined Twitter was like people would just post stuff about what they ate. That there wasn't like um, social awareness like they doing today. As far as what I recalled. So I that's interesting that how you were. And that was really I mean, so did you spend more time on Twitter than you were on LinkedIn or Facebook? Because we all like my thing was back in the early days of my social media experience, and that's like 2008, was mostly I got Twitter because I was on this, in 2007 I was listening about it. I got Twitter. I never really did much. I was mostly on Facebook, and then I know people who were just mostly on LinkedIn. So Twitter was your platform more than any other social network?
Yes, Twitter was my platform. I was on Facebook, but only the main reason I was on Facebook was because my family is spread out all over the world, and that was the most convenient way to communicate with them was Facebook. But I didn't get serious about Facebook marketing, excuse me, until a few years ago. And LinkedIn, like the same thing. Like, yes, I knew it was for professionals, but I didn't really understand the power that is available through LinkedIn. And each social media site has its strengths and its weaknesses. So you kind of have to explore and find out what works for you. But Twitter was definitely my key social media site, especially when I first started writing.
And in your bookstore on your website, you have like 16 results. I think one of them I thought was really interesting. You wrote a book about San Francisco wedding planning, or you're part of it.
So that's a fiction book. Um, and I worked with a traditional publisher. And yes, there was a group of us. So the first project that I did with the publisher was a Christmas project called The 12 Days of Christmas. And I was invited to the project by a writer friend that I had met online. And she asked each of us to write a 10,000 word Christmas story. And it could be any setting, any whatever we wanted to write, basically. There were no parameters. And so I chose to write a Christmas story set in Botswana because I was familiar with that area and I thought it would be something totally different and unique. And people really liked my story. And so then the publisher asked me if I would be interested in doing other projects with them. And he gathered a group of 6 of us and gave us the San Francisco wedding planner um, idea. So he had come up with the main characters in the story and their personalities. And the main character obviously was a wedding planner. And each of us were asked to write again 10,000 words. So the first writer wrote 10,000 words, and then the second person carried on from where the first person ended, and so on and so on. And I was number 6, and I got to wrap everything all together into as good a package as I could, tie all the loose ends together, and still leave a few loose ends so that we could write the next book in the series. So that was a really interesting challenge for me because I had to keep track of what each writer was doing in this with the story and make it make sense and also provide something enjoyable for the reader. And I'm really thankful for that opportunity. I actually have never met any of the other authors in person, so that was interesting to do a writing project that way.
It's a great exercise too. Besides collaboration, but just to really like be part of someone else's story and then add on to it. I think that's great. Yeah, Emily, our communication, she has a cold, so she's listening on, but she's actually an author too. She's been doing. That's why I wanted her to talk to you because she's published some books too, and she's doing some other stuff. But so now since you're into social audio, are you looking into creating a podcast? It just seemed like it's goes hand in hand. I'm sure you already have your recording everything, but are you converting them into a podcast? And
So I do have a podcast. I started it in January. It's under the title of Get Clients, Build Community. So if you search for that, you'll find it's available on Apple and Google and Spotify and all the main podcast platforms. And so when I started my podcast, I used it to share information that my clients were looking for. So I did a series on writing. Then I did a series on publishing and marketing. And I also did a series on Twitter and Twitter Spaces because I see so much potential for writers to use Twitter Spaces to collaborate and build their community and build their fan club, and make sales that way. Twitter is not a place that you come just to make sales. It's more of a place to build community. But as authors, we need to be thinking long term and building those connections. And if you can provide value, then people will want to buy from you. So that's what I encourage people to do. And then I did, in July, I started doing something a little bit different. It's still under the same title, Get Clients, Build Community, but the title of the show, subtitle of the show is Choices from Struggle to Strength. And so every week I'm interviewing authors and entrepreneurs, similar to what you mentioned at the beginning of this show, talking about some of the difficult things in people's lives and how those difficulties made them a stronger person. And often I find entrepreneurs and authors are kind of kickstarted by those difficult things. So this week, on Wednesday, I'm going to have Deborah Butterfield as my guest on my Twitter space. And I have already interviewed her and recorded it on Zoom. And so I use the recording on Zoom as my podcast, but then on Spaces, we go more into detail with the book or business that they are working on. And Deborah is an editor, a copywriter, and a writer, but she was launched into her writing career by a very painful experience. She was in her second marriage and she discovered that her daughter was being abused by her husband. And I mean, we wouldn't wish that on
That's
anybody.
horrible.
It is horrible. And so she survived through that and ended up working for an organization called Focus on the Family, and they are the ones that encouraged her to write a book. There are a lot of books for survivors of abuse, but there are not many books. And when she wrote her book, there were no books for parents who were dealing with helping their child through the abuse. And so that's what she did. She wrote a book for parents. So that's we get into some pretty heavy topics, as you can imagine. But my purpose in doing these podcasts is to help people know, firstly, that they are not alone when they're going through these horrible experiences, and then to provide help and resources, and also to feature other authors and entrepreneurs, because I think that the more that we collaborate, we all come out stronger in the end. So that's what I'm up to right now.
I love that. That's wonderful. And is your in real life friends think it's kind of strange that you work online like this? I'm like, some of my friends took them a while to even kind of like accept it, but then now I think that they think it's stranger that I'm on Twitter more than I'm on anything else.
Yes, I don't know if there's anybody in my area that is on Twitter Spaces. I have very close friends on Twitter that I've never met in person. But yeah, it is kind of a different world. And I don't know, I guess maybe because I grew up overseas and I understand the power of connecting with people globally. That's what really drew me into Twitter Spaces, because you can just pick up your phone and connect instantly with people all over the world, and come from different backgrounds and cultures, and yet have wonderful discussions and make the world a better place. So I say, let's do it.
I think that's so important to have that connection and collaboration together. So it's about 10:40. We usually put out the mic. So I want to say hi to Brent. I want to say hi to Tom, who's one of our members, and then and also Laura. How's it going? And Robin. Hi, Robin. And if you want to grab the mic and ask some questions, you're welcome to. Just know that we're recording and live streaming the space out to everybody in our social network, and also this will be distributed and also be created as a podcast. Hey, Brent, how are you?
Good. I just want to, well, I know that I'm taking a social media break, but I'm still supporting a few spaces, and this one is one of my favorite spaces to support, because I like to support what Tanya is doing, because Tanya is an amazing person.
Thank you, Brent. Did you have any questions for Ruth? I know you had her on your show, but thank you for sharing.
And I had the pleasure of interviewing Ruth, so I am excited to learn more stuff, because maybe there's new things that Ruth shared.
Well, Ruth actually just gave us some really a lot of information. I'm so happy that she's doing her podcast and utilizing Twitter Spaces to create it, and also she gave us a little tidbit. She did the interview really on Zoom, and then she records that. She uses that, and then she also uses Twitter Spaces too. So I really like that. Hi, Laura. How are you? Welcome to our Empower Yourself Monday.
Good morning. I'm way out here on the West Coast, so it's even earlier for me than it is for Ruth. I'm good. So I have a question for Ruth. What are some of the mistakes, big or small, that you see new creators making on Twitter, that ways that they could improve to use it to build their community?
That's a great question, Laura. I would say that some of the mistakes I see are, number one, not putting your profile together the way that you should to gain attention and present yourself as a professional. So, of course, replacing that egghead image is number one, because you don't want people to think that you're just brand new on Twitter all the time. But the banner picture is such a great piece of real estate that most people don't take advantage of. We can use it as our own advertising space. And so think about the message that you want to get across, and use a picture, but also maybe put some text in there. And I was looking at mine the other day and thinking, I need to update mine. We can put our website on there. We can put a link to our Twitter space. We can put a lot of things in there. Maybe not a link to our Twitter space, but information about the day and time that we do our spaces if we're hosting. So whatever you want people to know, put it in your header image. And the bio is a good place to share information as well. But I think most people do a fairly good job on their bio. And as you know, there are people that will help you with that as well. But the header image, I think, is one place that people could pay more attention and use more wisely. The other mistake I think people make is they make it all about themselves instead of focusing on building a community. And on Twitter, people want to be more collaborative, I find. And I mean, none of us like somebody coming up to us and just talking about themselves all the time. And it's the same on social media. So when you're on Twitter, you're tweeting about your books or what you're working on should only be 1 or 2 tweets out of 10. You need to be sharing helpful information. You need to be sharing something that shows people who you are as a person, and providing variety and value for people. And when you do that, then people will want to connect with you and want to build that relationship with you. So those would be my tips.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Robin. How are you? Thank you, Laura.
I am doing great. How are you?
We're doing great. Welcome. Welcome to Empower Yourself Monday. Did you have a question for Ruth?
I do. Hi, Ruth, and thank you so much for your time. I love the name Empower Yourself Monday. I'm working with women who I'm trying to empower every day of the week, not just Monday. And I have the know, like, and trust factor, and I have a beautiful audience of 40-year-olds and over who are coming out later in life. And they find themselves married to men, 20-year marriages and with children. And so it's a beautiful journey that I take them through. But I don't know if Twitter is the right place for me. Right now I'm using Twitter to really gain a lot of really good business knowledge, but I'd love to. It's either an opportunity or not. Like, I think maybe if I don't see enough LGBTQ spaces, maybe that's an opportunity. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if I should try to build my community here. Any thoughts on that?
I think I would just say you have to try and see what happens. And I would give. So, are you thinking of hosting your own space? Is that what you're asking about?
I could do that. Right now I do host, or I facilitate 4 support groups a week. I have a podcast called Coming Out Late. But I would love to, yeah, I'd love to maybe give that a try. And I just don't know what the presence is and how that would go over. Someone saying 100%.
Well, you could. I'm assuming you know how to search on Twitter using hashtags and different things. So you could do a search, and I know for Twitter Spaces, it's a little harder to find out exactly what's available because they don't have a good search function on Twitter
Well,
Spaces yet.
if you use Spaces dashboard, you can find all of you can find a lot of more easy. It's a lot more easier to find Spaces if you use spacesdashboard.com.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Brent.
Yes, that is a great tool. Thanks for reminding us of that, Brent. But I would say the best thing to do is try it for a few months and see how it goes. And your audience will tell you whether they want to be on Twitter or not, I guess.
Okay. And would you recommend, like, me posting like podcast episodes in Twitter? Is that like kosher? Is that a thing to do? Oops, 100%.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't tell you this earlier when I was talking about my podcast, but I use my podcast to advertise my Twitter Spaces, and I use my Twitter Space to advertise my podcast. So, and it works really well that way for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm relatively new to Twitter, so these questions might be elementary. I apologize.
No worries.
All right.
Robin,
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw something out there. Sorry, I have a cold. I sound horrible, but
Oh.
I do social media marketing and stuff like that, and I work with a lot of LGBTQ groups and such. And we have found, and I know it seems like it's a younger demographic, but it's actually really not. TikTok has a
Oh, yeah.
humongous
Yes.
lesbian community.
Yes.
There are people of all ages who are a part of it, and you don't have to show your face or dance. You can make like really cool videos for it. And I've had a lot of luck, like converting people from TikTok into coming on to podcasts and coming to the blog and all of that. So I would highly recommend checking that out too.
Yeah, that's excellent, Emily. Thank you for the reminder, because so many women in my audience, in my target audience and community, remind me of that. Like, Robin, you got to get on TikTok. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Of course.
And Robin, you can use Twitter Spaces to really curate or just to build your community, because we have a community section on Twitter, and actually Rose can tell us more. Hey, Rose, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Great to be here. I saw Ruth post this on Twitter, and I thought, wow, I never heard Ruth's story. She's always interviewing other people, so really fascinating to hear about her childhood and raising so many kids doing good. I don't know what my first question is. I guess my first question is, did you always love to, like, how did you start to write fiction or had you written it a lot in school, when you first wrote this 10,000 piece, a word piece that won the first prize?
So before let me finish with Robin really quick. I thought you were going to help me
Okay.
answer the questions for Robin. Robin, so
okay,
what I
sorry.
would suggest is, like, if we follow each other. This is Tanya Schultz. So if you want to start a space and you need a co-host, I can pop in and be your co-host, or at least you can kind of, and then we can start tweeting on, get you some listeners, and then have them come up and chat and share their story, because there are a lot of spaces about this, and because a lot of them are NFT artists. Really.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's like a whole women NFT artist that talks about all different subject matters, and they're like very tight. Yeah. So, but again, you can use.
I'm sorry I didn't answer that question, but I would encourage you, as you saying, to get on spaces. But maybe before you start one, just pop into different spaces and see what's going on. So you have an idea. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, did you say Tanya is your first name? Tanya Schultz?
Yeah, we follow each other.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, I'd love, and TikTok for sure.
Yeah, no, we follow each other. I think
All right,
we've been following each other for a while, actually.
Okay.
So
I didn't know your first name.
yeah, no worries, no worries. No, actually,
Thank
I looked at
you.
your profile. I'm like, she looks familiar. Oh no, Robin and I follow each other. But
Thank
but
you.
Laura had her hand up. Did you want to share with this too, Laura?
So one of the things I'd like to encourage Robin and anybody that's looking to build their platform is to use each platform to its best degree. So TikTok is a great way to reach out to the people that you're looking to serve, but Twitter is a great platform for connecting with people who have connections. So if you are looking for a connection to an author of a book that you want, there's probably somebody on Twitter who can make that connection. I use well, Twitter's my favorite. I really like Twitter, but I like words. So but I'm on a lot of different platforms.
I love words too, and I love Twitter for that reason, for the connections.
Yeah. But Twitter is the most professionally supportive platform I'm on. And I've met people like Ruth and Rose and this space, and so decide what you need from Twitter. It probably isn't your platform for reaching your audience.
No, I think it's the connections.
But it's the place to build the foundation for what you want to give your audience.
You're absolutely right.
And that's what I learned stuff like that from Rose and Ruth. So hang out with this crowd and you're gonna learn a lot.
I think I will. But yes, I've noticed that for me, it's more business. It's satisfying a business side of what I'm doing and the connections. I need connections badly. I'm a 61-year-old who just started building a business a year ago. So I'm trying to figure this all out, and connections would be golden. So you're absolutely right, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Rose, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to finish the thought with Robin, and Rose. Can you Can you reset your question to Ruth? Because I just want to finish with Robin, then
Sure.
Rose, you're next.
Sure. I was wondering how she got, how she knew she could write fiction when she entered that 10,000 word contest and won first prize. Okay, so just to clarify, the contest that I entered. Me? Yes, we heard you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're perfect.
Oh, okay.
So the contest that I entered was not 10,000 words. I think it was about 2,000 words. And it was a nonfiction piece that I wrote for that. But the 10,000 word fiction story that I wrote a few years later. And I had entered other contests by that time. And the reason I entered contests was to learn, because most contests they give you feedback. Even if you don't win, you get feedback, and I thought that was a win. And so I entered as many contests as I could when I first started becoming serious about my writing, and took some classes from some writing groups. And so that was the foundation that I had when I wrote the 10,000 word fiction story. Did you hear the answer there, Rose? I'm not sure if Rose is hearing us.
I can hear you. Let me give her a couple of more second. It's about 10:54. I want to go ahead and wrap up the space also. And Rose, can you hear us?
Yes, I was trying to take what happened.
Oh no, it's like now you're sounding like the voice changing thing. There we go. She'll be back. She's having a problem with her internet. There she is. Bring her back up. Okay. There you go. Is it better, Ruth? I get confused. There's Ruth and Rose, the two of you ladies. Sorry about that.
It's very spunky. I didn't hear. I asked the question. I didn't hear an answer. Oh, wow.
Oh no. Yeah, but it's probably we're going to get ready another for an update. So
You have to listen to the podcast.
yeah. Well, you have to listen to a replay. It's on YouTube and it's on Facebook and it's actually on Twitter Live on our AWCSF's Twitter page. So we're doing that. So Ruth, any final thoughts? I think Rose, did you get Ruth's answer?
I think she said she didn't hear the answer, but it looks like she's having problems again.
Yeah,
So
no,
hopefully
I didn't hear the answer, but that's, you go ahead because it's almost 11 o'clock. So I don't know what happened with Twitter. Go ahead. Oh, I don't want to hold you up if you answered
Okay.
already.
So Ruth, can you just go ahead and tell her? Can you restate that again for Rose? So this way we'll have it. We can go over for like a couple minutes.
Sure. I just said that what I did was I entered numerous contests, and several of them were fiction contests, and I received feedback from professionals by entering those contests. And so by the time I wrote that 10,000 word piece, I had experience writing fiction.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Great. As I said before, I don't know if you heard me, but I started listening and was really intrigued because I never heard your story. And so it was really cool to hear that. So thank you, uh, Tanya and everyone here.
Thanks for your support and encouragement, Rose.
Yes, thank you for all your support. And so, Ruth, any final thoughts about 1057? I appreciate everyone for being here. Laura, Robin, for asking questions, and Brent. And Ruth, any final thoughts before we let you go? And like, I got, I got to know you more. Even though we've been in some spaces, and I've listened to you, and I watched you, and read your story. But I got to learn some more about you, and like I said, and you also affirmed to me that stick to one platform that you're comfortable with. You find your community by building it. And sometimes I always feel like community does not mean you need to have thousands of people. You can start out with another person. That would be considered a community. So Ruth, any final thoughts?
Well, I would just say to anyone that is starting out on their writing journey, just go ahead and jump in and try things and enter contests, get feedback. I would say one of the things that I see in some beginning writers is that they're not willing to take the feedback that they receive. So listen to the feedback, listen to those who have made the mistakes so that you don't have to make the mistakes yourself. And then find a community that is supportive and encouraging, because writing can be a very lonely venture if you don't have that community support. And I am so grateful that I have a few communities that I belong to, and each community is unique, and I'm able to contribute to them in different ways. So those would be my tips. If you want help in detail, I am available. You can go to my website, ruthlsnyder.com, and find out more about me there.
And that's all your social network too, right? At Ruth L. Snyder.
Yes, most social media that sites that I'm on, it's Ruth L. Snyder. And just a funny story about the L. If you go onto Google and just Google Ruth Snyder, you'll find a woman who murdered her husband with an axe in the early 1900s. So I decided I didn't want to be associated with that.
I actually saw that. I was trying to say anything. I saw that. I was like, but I goes, I don't think she's that old though.
No, I'm not that old.
Yeah, but I always I always tell people you can make sure you Google yourself and what's in the name, right? What's in the name, but it's really important. So, yeah, so I recognize, and it sounds so, like Ruth L. Snyder is like, it's like a novel you pick up, it's like Ruth L. Snyder. So will you be writing? I know you're doing a lot of like self help and helping. Were you doing more fiction writing in the future? I should have asked you this, but
I don't know. I would like to. So that 10,000 word Christmas story that I wrote a few years ago, people have asked me to expand that story, and that would be a fun story to expand. Um, I guess for me right now, time is still a challenge. I still have my twins still need a lot of support. I'm hoping that within 5 to 10 years that will be different. And I do have a 14-year-old at home still. So still parenting. And I mean, I guess I'll always be parenting, but in a few years, maybe I'll have more disposable time, put it that way.
So, on that note, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you for being here. And again, this is another episode of Empower Yourself Monday, where we feature a communicator that has gone through ups and downs and triumph. And if you know anyone, or if you're one of the ladies or men in the space would like to be part of this, please reach out to us. You get up more information from our profile. And if you just do a search at AWCSF, you can find us on all social network. And for more information about who we are, our national chapter has been around since 1909. You can go to WOMCOM.org, or you can follow them on Twitter as AWC Connects. And for more information about us and see some of our stuff that we've done, it's AWC South Florida spelled out.org. So AWCSouthFlorida.org. And again, everyone, have a great day. And we'll be back next Monday for another Empower Yourself Monday. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, Tanya.